Welcome to the Vet Med Wellness and Leadership Podcast, where we discuss central challenges vet med leaders face, such as burnout, stress, and difficult interactions with clients and staff, just to name a few. In each episode, you will hear about actionable solutions that you can apply to your practice and invitations to connect with fellow leaders who are passionate about improving the wellness of the vet med profession. By subscribing, liking, commenting, or sharing this podcast, you are helping more veterinary professionals find the resources shared in these episodes. Thank you in advance for listening and supporting this show. I hope you enjoy it. Hey everybody, Crystal Stokes here, and joining me today is Dr. George Cuellar, who is a former hospital owner, corporate regional executive, and state veterinary leader who has spent decades shaping veterinary teams and elevating medical quality. He now coaches veterinarians and emerging leaders to lead with clarity and purpose by helping them define their vision, strengthen their culture, and elevate their medical and operational performance. George, thank you for being here with us today.
Hello, Crystal. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Well, before we dive into this, so the topic for today is vision and beyond for aspiring entrepreneurs. And you give 3 different phases they can work through, which is what we're going to talk about today. But before we get into that, can we just talk a little about who you are and how you got here so they know who this fabulous person is that's telling them how to go beyond as an entrepreneur?
Absolutely. I think for me, the first 10 years of my career, I spent, like everybody else, working for veterinarians, trying to figure out what was what. And then I joined a corporate group. And during the 10 years I spent rising through the ranks of 2 different corporations to the point of being a regional vice president, I found out that when I thought I was leading, I was not. I figured out that leadership meant for me at that time having people do what I thought they should do when I wasn't there. I mean, instead of when I was there, So everybody does what you want when you're there, and then you leave, and then everything, nothing happens. And so I figured out that my leadership was lacking, and I set off on a path to gather myself, to understand better what leadership was, and see if I could be much more effective, in terms of that. And that took me down a path where I learned a lot. And I took that knowledge, and after my corporate, I decided to buy a veterinary hospital. And so I applied all those things that I learned in order to create a veterinary hospital and a culture that I felt was optimal, not only for me, but for what my vision was. And it all started with my vision of what I thought was important. And going from what you think is a vision to sharing your vision to engaging others was the path that I took. And that's what I'm going to talk about today.
I love it. And I think that the people listening today will really enjoy this. I know on our end at Full Circle, we have plenty of people come to us who are either emerging leaders or currently in leadership roles that arrived there through a variety of paths. And, it's just sort of like, well, what am I doing? I don't know. I'm just kind of going instinctually based on what I've seen in the past. I'm role modeling off of that, or the urgency of the moment. I'm just sort of responding to it. So it's not a reacting, responding, just in the day-to-day flow, but not necessarily having the privilege or the time to step back and say, how do I do this effectively? And I think it's wonderful to be able to learn from someone who has a lot of experience and has been there, done that maybe you can help them shorten that learning curve a little bit today. So let's just dive right in. Like you said, you had 3 different phases. So let's just start with phase 1.
Phase 1. I think phase 1 is actually having a vision. A hospital is like an organism, it requires a purpose. Just like we require purpose, it requires a purpose, and that's the vision. And one of the leader's jobs is to, climb the ladder and look in the future and see where you're going and to have a clear kind of identity or whatever your hospital is wanting to do. And so the first thing is to have a vision. And I think that it's important to see if you can identify just one non-negotiable, reason that the hospital is there other than profit. One reason,
Mhm.
whatever it is. Some people do it through meditation. Some people do it through journaling. Some do it through post-it notes, vision boards, whatever it is. Take the time to think about why you exist. Why does the hospital exist?
Mhm.
And so I had a vision, and the vision I had for my hospital was to be the destination,
Mhm.
the destination for clients who wanted good medicine, the destination for staff who wanted a great place to work, a place where you could grow. And so I wanted a teaching hospital. I wanted my staff to get up in the morning and want to come to work. And I wanted clients to have a great experience and, sing my praises all over the place. In other words, you know, having the destination was my vision. So I put that all in our handbook. I started off that way. The
Mhm.
first meeting I had with my new staff was trying to figure out what they wanted. And what they wanted was health insurance. Okay. Okay. I can do that. The real thing, I can do that. So, gathering trust, right? But I think when I said our goal and I said it in the first meeting, I wanted to have the best medicine. I am board certified in in feline practice. I enjoy medicine. I love it. I think that I'm good at it. And that is what motivates me at the end of the day is that. So I wanted that. I wanted to be not quality because everyone says they're quality. I wanted to be state of the art. I wanted to be complete. I wanted to keep up. I
Right.
wanted to, keep learning, never stop growing, always be in the forefront. And so that, and I told them, I want you to wake up every day and want to come to work.
Yes.
And in my mind, I saw people coming to work for me and passing 15 veterinary hospitals along the way
Right.
just to come to that place. And they did
Great.
eventually, you know?
Can I ask you a question?
Yep.
When you're recommending people go through this exercise, so let's say, I'm an owner of a practice. I'm going to sit down and get my journal out and work on this vision and work on these kind of non-negotiables. When I'm trying to whittle it down to something I might present to my team, how verbose or how short should it be?
To me, if you can get it down to one sentence,
Right.
you know, that's perfect. Something compelling, something that we all as veterinarians of veterinary medicine feel compelled to, you know. We all have inside of us healers and teachers and leaders, something that touches any part of that, I think is compelling. You know, in addition to that, I think that there has to be some set of values.
Mhm.
So not only just a vision of your purpose, but the values that go with it. So I think that values and and vision kind of go together. I think they are cornerstones, if you will. So I had a list of values that I felt compelled to have, and I think over the first year, those values changed as we got to know each other, and they coalesced probably over the first couple of years, and we have like I don't know, our values were pretty standard. Caring, commitment, right? Contribution, leadership, self motivation, respect, trust, and fun. And I always had that one in there. A lot of people don't have fun, but I wanted to have fun. And, you know, I mean,
Yes.
why come to work if you're not having fun, no matter how hard it gets?
Yes.
And no matter how tough it gets, and it does get tough and it does get hard because we have a difficult,
Right.
right? We're in a difficult industry. If you can make it fun, even for a little part of the day,
Mhm.
you know.
Totally.
So that was one of my non-negotiables, was having fun. Yeah.
Mhm. Great. Nice. Yeah, I would say values, the way I look at them within our organization and the clients that we work with, it's kind of like your set of rules for how we operate. These are our agreements across the whole team. We always uphold these. They're kind of like your compass and how you hone in on, okay, if you have to make a decision, go back to the values and let them lead how to make a difficult decision so it carries us forward. I know you also, in the same section under the first pillar, you talk about being able to project the future state in concrete terms. That way people can really picture where they're going. Talk more about that.
So as your values and your vision come together, you do that. You want to project where you see the hospital in terms of staffing, like we talked about, and that is who is on your staff. I mean, the metaphor I can use is, some people use a car or a bus, an island, a ship, but imagine yourself, on a ship.
Mhm.
You can't drive the ship by yourself. Even if you're in a rowboat, if you're rowing, you're not steering, and if you're steering, you're not rowing. So at some point, in order to create some sort of momentum, you need other people. And so who those people are vastly important. So who do you see as your staff? What's your perfect staff? And how do you see that? Do you see clients? What do you want their experience to be? Not just how they're treated, but what their experience is. One of the things I told my receptionist all the time was, can you imagine somebody walking into your house and you ignoring them?
Yeah, that's a great
Makes no sense. Somebody walks in the hospital and they're ignored. It makes no sense, you know? And so, the other one was, medical standards. How do you see your medical standards? How do you see leadership and who leads? For me, everybody leads. They just all have within them. And if you give them and you trust them enough and you give them some sort of leeway, they will all lead. And at the end of the day, you can't have a business without financial health. And if you don't know what that is, then I think that's just the term, figure that one out. But for me, at the end of the day, it is a business. To the extent that the business does well, everybody wins.
Mhm.
That wins, you win, clients win, you have equipment, it's just a very, very healthy,
Mhm.
phase. So for me, phase one is just that. It's having a vision, having values, and then putting them into concrete terms for the different stakeholders, if you will,
Mhm.
business.
So it's basically that first stage is that you can see it, and as you as a leader know what it is. You have to know first before the next phase can happen. So you get solid first as a leader. Now we move into phase two.
That's it. You know? And so once you're in phase one, there's one thing that comes, there's a realization that happens, and it's an important mindset shift in my mind. And that is, I can't do it alone. And I saw too many veterinarians get stuck trying to do it alone. It invites burnout. It invites every kind of health issue imaginable, is attempting to do it alone. And so the second phase is, how do I take what I know now and share it? So sharing a vision is phase two. And interestingly enough, a lot has been written about sharing a vision. I take kind of a very rough sketch from a book called The Fifth Discipline Field Book by Peter Senge, who's a professor at MIT. And he has a whole chapter on shared vision, but it comes down to really 5 ways or 5 steps or 5 gradations, if you will. And that's, you can break them down into, when it comes to shared vision, is telling, selling, testing, consulting, and co-creating. And the last one sounds so cool, but it doesn't happen automatically, right? So you got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And breathe. It started my first meeting with the staff of this new hospital. And I told them what my vision is. I said, here's how I see. Unbeknownst to our clients, we have a really good hospital here. I want this to be the destination for this, for that, for that. And so what telling does is it gains compliance, not commitment.
Mm-hmm.
It says, okay, he's the boss. We have to do this in order to get what we want. So you get compliant. I, in my years, have seen hospitals that never go beyond telling, and they tell them every day.
Mm-hmm.
And then the staff, not only are they told, but they're micromanaged to the point where, you're not doing this, you're not doing this. What's our vision type of thing? And it gets toxic. It doesn't go anywhere, So the second one is more softer. It's more selling, which is, can I get buy-in? Can I build some momentum here? Who's with me kind of type of thing. And then I start thinking about, okay, who on this ship that I have, who is the most likely to help me lead? Who is the most likely partner for me in this endeavor? And you'll find one or two people that you click with, that we share the values that you have, that are more likely to be willing to kind of go with you. And that's the point where you start to test.
Mm-hmm.
The testing phase means you got to get vulnerable. You got to give up a little to get a little.
Mm-hmm.
And so you start testing ideas, what do you think about this? Does this resonate? Does this sound reasonable? Is waking up there wanting to come to work, is that reasonable? Does anybody do that? Does anybody hate go to work? What's going on here? Am I crazy?
Yeah.
So you're testing ideas, and you're kind of building dialogue, and that's when you start to listen more.
Mm-hmm.
You start to talk more, and the conversations become more open-ended. And that's when you start to get kind of to the next phase, to me, where your vision becomes collaborative.
Mm-hmm.
Right? All of a sudden you're thinking, wow, it's starting to take shape. Whatever you started with, this is starting to shape differently, starting to get colored differently. There's different opinions.
Mm-hmm.
And something comes to mind, which I think is really, really important. It's like, well, where is all this happening? Well, it's happening in conversations, side conversations. Sometimes when you're treating a pet, sometimes when you're in the doctor's office sharing stuff. But a lot of it comes in meetings, regular meetings that are important. And there are two types of meetings, I think, they're just conceptually. I call them rowing meetings and steering meetings.
Mm-hmm.
A rowing meeting is where you tell everybody where the water cooler is, what kind of insurance they have, what they're going to do tomorrow. It's things on this list of to-dos,
Mm-hmm.
and all meetings have to have some sort of rowing. But then there's the steering part of the meeting, like, we have a problem, what are we going to do? Instead of giving them the solution, you encourage them to come up with their own ideas on how to solve a problem. There's nothing like communal problem solving, because whatever idea you come up with, it's the group's idea. And, that's that's your idea trying to sell it. So the steering part of a meeting is vision, values, where are we going? And that's when you start to open it up to collaboration. So that phase is really starting to be collaborative. And then you get to the point where your purpose and your values are pretty much discovered, but now they're being rediscovered. And now you're rebuilding, you know. Now your culture is starting to come in, and what you've done is starting to bear fruit, and strategy and innovation and daily behavior, they're now coming from a shared sense of purpose. And this is when you start to look at yourself as part of and leading a really unique, organism. It's growing, it's thriving. And people come in the door and they know it. They don't need to see it. I've visited so many hospitals and I can tell when it's growing and thriving and when it's just toxic and soul sucking, just by walking in the door,
Oh, absolutely. It's an energy. And I think what you're describing, it reminds me of like the stages of a child developing. It's kind of similar. Eventually gets to a point where it kind of takes on a life of its own. And that's what you want. It's grown on you, and now you don't have full control, but that's okay because you trust the people that you brought in and that alignment that you set early on. So I think that's just such an exciting phase that you move into once you've laid all that groundwork.
And there's this idea about the charismatic leader, and everybody looks at leaders like this charismatic leader, but that creates dependence. All of a sudden you're dependent. So when that leader's not there, nothing functions, And so I always said that what you want to do and what I wanted to do for myself is to work myself out of a job.
Exactly.
Such that I was superfluous, I enjoyed the medicine, but there were systems and processes that we had honed that were working to create the vision that I've sought.
Mm-hmm.
But towards the end, we started co-creating things. It was just not my vision anymore. Mm-hmm. It was everybody's vision, and that's the great thing. There's a moment in that where one of your staff will come to you. It may be a manager, it may be a leader, it may not be. It's just somebody will come to you and they say, I have an idea. I think we should act like this or be this. Mm-hmm. You know that idea. You know where it came from. It came from some talk long ago. But it's theirs now, And that's a unique feeling.
Wonderful. So after this, is this where we move into stage 3 or phase 3?
Yep. This is it. So once you have it and you've shared it and you have this culture, well, to get to that co-creation, you have to engage people, mm-hmm. right? You can't do it by yourself. And I had a way that I engaged people. I had to figure out who were the right people that were on the ship. And the first thing that they had to have was understanding the vision. They had to understand it, And the way to get clarity about whether somebody understands something is just to ask questions. Get curious. Mm-hmm. Tell me what the vision, tell me what you see. Once you get curious, and this is all part of kind of coaching to me, is get curious, find out if anyone and everyone understands what you're talking about. So that's just phase 1. Do you understand? And then phase 2 is, okay, do you want to be here? Right? Because desire matters.
You may forget to ask that one, honestly. So I often see like, hey, I've hired you, you're here. I'm just going to assume that we don't have anything else to discuss. And I think that's where we see that kind of resignation, the apathy, because we have like, do you truly want to be here? That's a really good question to just sit and let them actually answer.
It is. And then you got to be careful for the person who quits but stays.
Oh, no. Nope.
The person who says they want to be there, but they don't.
The quiet quitter. Mm-hmm.
The quiet quit. And then you that's where leadership comes. You take it upon yourself where I don't believe it. If they say, yes, I want to participate. I want to be here. You can always say, I, I just I don't believe it.
Mhm.
You know, I,
Convince.
yeah, I just don't. And I've had many at that point when I say I don't believe it, say, you're right.
Yeah.
Great, great. For
Now we're on the same
everyone's
page.
sake,
Yeah.
right? For everyone's sake, let's part ways, right? And find a place that you love, that you grow. This is not the place.
Mhm.
You know, if you don't want to grow, if you don't want to teach, if you don't want to be used at your highest purpose, if you don't want to learn every day, go somewhere else.
Right.
But
What do you do though if they, what do you do if they say they do want to participate? Like it's a hell yeah, and you do believe them. So they've checked two boxes now.
that's it. That's it. Well, then, if you want to participate and you want to grow and you want to be here, then let's have a plan.
Ooh.
Okay. Because that is important for everybody. And everybody at our hospital had a plan, right? And it was outcome based, not process based.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there whenever you talk about vision and you talk about skills, there's always a gap, and the gap's not a flaw. It's not a flaw. It's kind of an engine, right? It creates, I call it the rubber band. It's the stretch between where you are and where you want to go. And it is a stretch, you know, and it would be little things and big things. Like little things for receptionists may be smile every time you answer the phone. Just smile, right? Easy stuff. I remember for our technicians and aspiring technicians, it might be if they were training every day, attempt one, IV catheter on an anesthetized or pre-sedated before anesthetized pet. My favorite for our veterinarians were, because they hated to go up front, was every day walk up front into a full lobby and just smile and say, hello, everyone. Once a day. A stretch for some not, but for some. So they were concrete, based on our values, skill building things
Mm-hmm.
so that they would grow and become better. For our manager, who eventually became our manager, my goal for her was to become an RVT. She was an assistant.
Yeah.
I said, show me that you want to learn. I'll pay for the course. Take it. All you need is your time and your effort and your energy. She did. She became a great RVT and a great manager, and she still is one today. So those are the kinds of things. So they each have a plan. And when you have a plan, you need two more things. And this is straight out of the 7 Habits of Stephen Covey, if you've ever taken it, called Greed and Clean. Okay, you need accountability and consequences.
Right.
Because without accountability and consequences, it's just theater. And these plans will, litter the hospital and just, there'll be nothing.
It's just a dream.
It's just a dream. Right. And so, accountability to me was always something that I thought I was responsible for.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was accountable for their plans. That was a huge mistake. They are accountable for their plans. And accountability is different for everybody. Everybody's has a different sense of accountability. So I always ask the question, okay, here's your plan. Now, how do you hold yourself accountable? Right? And some will say, I always make plans and I never keep them. Well, then what do you do? Usually I tell somebody because then they help me. So maybe you need a partner. Maybe you just are automatically accountable to yourself.
Right.
Maybe you need a structure, Some people need something about their bed every day that they look up at.
I really love this part of the conversation because I just spoke with one of my coaches. We were talking about this today earlier. just with a client that does struggle with accountability. And we were talking about how those of us who are in the kind of helping profession as a coach or a therapist or a consultant, we often end up here because we really like helping and we really like solving problems and we're probably pretty good at it. Therefore, we run the risk of helping, right? Which actually puts that person at risk of never growing. So we were discussing like the importance as a coach, consultant, therapist, whatever role we're in, leader as well, a leader, a manager, any of those positions, to really know the boundary of where you stand and not to cross that boundary, because it's almost like giving that person floaty wings. If you're always chasing them around, holding them accountable, saying, oh, well, what support do you need? Maybe I can make calendar invites for you. Do you want me to call you at 4 a.m. and wake you up so you make that appointment on time, right? Then we become complicit in their dysfunction. We don't allow them space to grow. So I think that's a really important point to drive home to leaders listening, is really by stepping back and asking them to grow, like giving them permission to grow, let them problem solve, let them figure it out, let them develop their systems. You can be there along for the ride to help them think through things, but don't answer the question for them. Don't build it for them. Don't do the work for them, because you're sabotaging their growth. And I don't think that's intuitive for those of us who are helpers. I think vet med, we love to help, right? We like fixing things. We have to resist the urge.
Well, it brings up a couple of things that are important. One is they may fail.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay. You know,
Fail.
right?
Yeah.
I know sometimes the best things we learn, is from that. And the other thing is that we often lose sight of is, don't forget to celebrate the successes, right? Mm-hmm. So celebrate the successes. I think that comes down to what are the consequences. The consequences for failure are not like you have to leave. They're, okay, now what? Let's rearrange this. Let's figure it out. What are we going to do? And get their input. Okay, that didn't work. Well, what would work? The idea of collaborating around the plan and making it their plan rather than your plan, their accountability rather than your accountability, and their consequences rather than your consequences are great. If you can sit back and just celebrate how good somebody does, I think there's no better feeling.
My favorite part of my job, for sure, is the celebration part. We just finished up an annual program with one of our clients. And it was just so fun to do our very last workshop together, where they each presented, like they did a presentation of what they've learned in the past year and how they're applying it to themselves as a leader and what they want to do moving forward. And just each one was so unique. And it like basked in the glory of watching these people, celebrate their wins, which actually occurred through plenty of losses. There's a lot of learning, of stumbling and falling and messing up, but doing it together in a group and sharing it and learning from each other. And they really supported each other. It was, it's like heaven a day like that, to just sit there and listen to all the wins.
I think that's it. In a nutshell, once you can align a vision and values and individual performance, that alignment, it's just a great thing. Now, will there be problems? Sure. Will there be ups and downs? Sure. Will people come in the middle of it? Yes. But you know what happens when people come in the middle of a culture like that is that they are either part of it or not part of it. They self-select very quickly. In a very strong culture, I found people came into the mix and I didn't do the hiring, my manager did. And it's just like, this person isn't working out.
Yeah.
Why? Because we're cross values or we're cross purpose. Mm-hmm. Or this person who we thought wasn't going to be doing well, all of a sudden got it.
Clicked.
And it clicked because they wanted it to click. They had the desire. Yeah. And they turned out to be fantastic. Mm.
So good.
It's like a living, breathing thing.
It is. So just to summarize for those listening, the 3 stages were essentially like, first was about defining it, define the vision, define it. Hey, this is what it is. Second stage is to share it with people effectively. And the third stage is to really engage them in it. So 1, 2, 3 punch. And I want to kind of bring in this down the home stretch, George. I want to see if you want to leave our listeners with 1 or 2 just top takeaways. It could be repeating something we already said. It could be something totally new. For these emerging leaders or current leaders, if they're listening to this while driving, perhaps, and they are only going to remember a bit because our days are full and we're very busy, what do you want them to like take away from this today?
I think the first one is that all of this is inside you and you can do this. This is not rocket science. This is just, it's about focus and determination and grit, that will get you by a lot. And I think another one would be have compassion for yourself.
Yeah.
Allow yourself some grace because there will be ups and downs, and the last thing you need to do is beat yourself up about it.
Beautifully said. I hope those listening today really take that to heart. I'm going to piggyback off you and add some more, which is don't go it alone. I can say that as a founder myself. I wouldn't be here today if I didn't have mentors and coaches and people supporting me. It makes a huge difference. We are a social species. We made it this far in evolution here by doing stuff together. And so I think a lot of leaders, I know I was raised up by be super independent, be individualistic, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, fake it till you make it, all those cliches. And that really created a ceiling of growth. By reaching out, connecting with people that can help you, like George, like Full Circle, like other peers around you, like reach out. Absolutely don't go it alone. It's very lonely at the top. This stuff is hard and we don't want to be in an echo chamber. So get that support, I think that's just critical. And I want to give those listening today idea of how to reach you, George. If they'd like to connect, they like your style, they want to learn more, how can they find you?
Easy as LinkedIn. LinkedIn is kind of my go-to.
That's where I found you.
Yeah. Easy.
Good. I will post your LinkedIn profile in the show notes so you don't have to hunt for it. I will say George is very easy to get a hold of. He responded when I messaged him. That's how we met. So I encourage anybody listening today to reach out. George, I really appreciate you being on today. This was really fun.
My pleasure. I loved it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining me today. I hope that you feel stoked after listening to this episode. And as always, I would love to hear your comments and feedback. Is there a topic that you want to know more about? Please let me know. And thank you again for subscribing and sharing your favorite episodes with others. It really means a lot.